I'm King Link, and this week we're doing a design review of SUPERHOT Mind Control Delete with the bonus of being able to talk about the entire family of SUPERHOT games. If you already owned SUPERHOT before the release of SUPERHOT Mind Control Delete on July 16th, 2020, you already own a copy of Mind Control Delete and you probably should go check it out after this video. SUPERHOT was a pretty good game from 2016. I enjoyed it quite a bit. I think a lot of people did, though people bought into the final lines of the game a little bit too much. Still, if I had one complaint about that game, it would be that it was a little bit too short, especially when it's $25. The good news, though, was there was a promise of free DLC coming, Mind Control Delete. It would be a roguelite mode with the same gameplay as the original. I was, of course, interested in that, but it slipped off my radar after a while. Well, 4 years later, it's 2020 because that's how years work. Stuck in the house for unrelated reasons, and suddenly Mind Control Delete gets dropped. It's more SUPERHOT, which is exactly what I really wanted, but I think Mind Control Delete is the game that SUPERHOT always should have been. Thankfully, we can talk about both of these games. We also have a third title to talk about here, but let's just start with these two. I'll also be putting the name of the game in the upper left corner because honestly, these games look very similar. They should. So Mind Control Delete is a roguelite, and what that means is you get randomized levels with similar layouts. There are 32 maps in Mind Control Delete, but each time you play a map, it's extremely randomized and additional pieces can modify the layout to the point that every run at the same level will feel completely different for at least most of the game. Yet the more I've played of Mind Control Delete, the more I keep coming back to one fact that just sticks in my mind. Mind Control Delete isn't a first-person shooter, at least not a simple one. Yes, of course, you aim guns, you shoot at enemies, and it has the gimmick of time moves when you do. But rather than being an intense shooter, I find that my mind goes towards more of an analytical space. It feels closer to something like Portal, even there's traces of Baba Is You with that puzzle mentality. Yet to execute most of the moves I am going to come up with a game requires some proficiency in the first-person shooter genre. But SUPERHOT is more of a puzzle game. Players won't be able to mindlessly hulk out and attack enemies head-on for long. The number of enemies and how they attack the player will change to the point of some level of tactics is necessary. The main gameplay loop of time slowing down to the point of almost stopping, not actually stopping, when you aren't moving, is intended to give players far more time to react to the enemy's attacks. The gameplay change of time moving when you do and the move to a more tactical game is what has made SUPERHOT really stand out from a genre that tries really hard not to innovate. While everyone else is stuck with generic military shooters, SUPERHOT has changed genres while still retaining what people care about in the FPS genre. At the very least, it's standing on that bridge between the two. I think the developers have avoided selling both SUPERHOT and Mind Control Delete as a puzzle game because they feel it might harm sales, and honestly, I think they're correct about it. But it's hard to play SUPERHOT without using those analytical skills. Puzzle games don't actually need one solution per puzzle. There's actually two roguelite genres out there as well. There's of course the action game that most people know about today, and what's on screen now, the turn-based combative NetHack. Yeah, I'm sure I've lost some of you already, so let's quickly go back to the action, but the fact is that in NetHack there are multiple ways to stay alive and win every encounter. Every loss in NetHack is because you made some mistake, and the same is true from SUPERHOT. With that being said, I think there's another piece that people rarely consider with SUPERHOT, and it's one that Mind Control Delete has improved significantly. The opening of Mind Control Delete starts by showing the player very simple levels. The first hour or so of Mind Control Delete had me underwhelmed as I played through a series of short levels. I was a touch confused at this part, but the one thing that was clear is SUPERHOT Mind Control Delete has extremely polished game design and gameplay systems. It's simple to look at the screen and identify what matters. There's only 3 colors to consider. Black means something that you can pick up, red means a target, and white means you're unable to interact with it. So you use the black objects to hit the red objects and win the game. The weapons all feel great as well, and even the ability to grab anything next to the player and fling it feels very satisfying even if it doesn't do much damage. It pushes the player to experiment and try out new things. Sure, a throwing star may end up killing an enemy in a single hit, but surprisingly so will a record that the player will find at the disco or a palette that an artist might use. Players will of course gravitate towards the stronger weapons, mostly guns, melee weapons, and those instant kill thrown items, but there are other options that are quite useful throughout the game. SUPERHOT Mind Control Delete reminds me a lot of how Hitman 2 gives the player almost unlimited options in how to tackle targets and more than enough tools for the job. Though I would say that SUPERHOT's interface is even better about this, and the limited level of interaction makes for a more high-octane experience. These early levels, while confusing because of a lack of roguelite elements here, feel polished and well designed, and it's this level of design that helps to quickly teach the player what's going on and then allows them to use that knowledge throughout the entire game. Watch how an enemy uses a two-handed gun here. They'll run with it with one hand off, take both hands, place them on the gun, aim at the player, and eventually fire. Every movement here is very deliberate, but because much of the gameplay is about slowing down the time to make sort of snap decisions, these same motions are made by every single enemy using a two-handed gun. Numerous times I thought that an enemy was about to shoot at me and realized he wasn't because that left hand was not helping aim. There's also a moment that you can find where you can throw off the enemy's ability to aim. I was able to use that effectively by monitoring the body language of the enemies. I honestly thought this was one of the reasons why SUPERHOT was so popular, but I actually went back to the original SUPERHOT, and it's not exactly how the game worked, at least not at this levels. Enemies were far faster to fire and used less deliberate motion. Even dodging bullets is quite a bit harder. Adding in a cleaner attack cycle is critical to making Mind Control Delete work better. After all, you're going to be playing this game far longer, playing the same levels over and over, and that combat is at the core of the entire game. It needs to feel clean and rewarding to make everything in Mind Control Delete feel better, especially with those roguelite elements. SUPERHOT was about those small, contained, and scripted encounters, whereas Mind Control Delete is more about randomized content, which can't always be contained in the same way. As such, SUPERHOT had to evolve its core gameplay systems, and you can see the difference between the two games if you look closely. The thing is, I bring so much attention to these small mechanics here of the UI and the interaction because everything in SUPERHOT is built on this. Now this sounds obvious, but allow me to ask a different question. Why do so many multiplayer games spend time and money on making a deathmatch mode of some sort when they can make a more interesting and unique mode such as the Assault mode in Unreal Tournament? I think the reason it's done this way is because without a good deathmatch, other modes will suffer for it. If killing another player isn't interesting, then doing other stuff while having to kill other players won't make that core gameplay system interesting, and it has the same issues. This is something I think we did poorly on Saints Row 2. I worked on that game from the beginning to end and did a decent amount of the multiplayer gameplay programming as well. The thing is, we made a very fast deathmatch mode because everyone has deathmatch, but poured most of our resources into the other multiplayer mode, Strongarm, with the assumption that Strongarm's additional gameplay elements would balance out the weakness of the deathmatch. I don't think it really worked out that way. If the core fundamental part of your game, whether it be deathmatch or just normal gameplay, isn't exciting, you can still build a game around that, but you're going to have a serious problem with the foundation that you're building your game upon. To get back to SUPERHOT Mind Control Delete, the good news is everything here is extremely well polished to the point that it makes the entire game an absolute joy to play through for hours on end. Just playing the same level to try to beat them is interesting because players have a wealth of options, the great controls, and they feel they have complete agency to win, even if they fail. SUPERHOT and Mind Control Delete are awesome, but let's talk a small amount about the roguelite elements here and how Mind Control Delete does something a bit different. There are a lot of roguelites out there, but almost every one is based on a singular dungeon where the player has to play through a set of levels or encounters and try to win the entire dive in a single go. There's a lot of variety in the genre, but even when games have different levels or sets of enemies, they're usually done on a single path progression of the levels. Mind Control Delete is more level-based, where the player has to play through different sets of levels. You progress through different nodes, with each set being another step of difficulty. But there's something great about SUPERHOT's progression. When you reach certain milestones, Mind Control Delete starts to throw different enemies at you, but the enemies don't just appear in every rotation. Every set of levels you tackle seems to have a specific enemy that will be mixed into the enemy rotation just for that set. There's also a difficulty based on how often enemies will appear, how often they're given weapons, and other factors. It's great to have a game that switches between the enemy types as it adds more variety to SUPERHOT Mind Control Delete. The type on the screen where only one limb of the body can be targeted to do damage gives a whole new challenge, but they feel special when they appear because they aren't always attacking a player in every set of levels. A bonus of breaking up the super enemy types is that if one enemy has your number and you struggle against them every time, you aren't going to be thrown at them over and over every chance the game has. This means enemies will rotate, giving players different experiences and create a more interesting experience rather than a grind against the same enemies over and over. Now, at the same time, not everything is perfect here. Throughout Mind Control Delete, players will earn different cores. These are the main abilities that the players are going to get. The player starts with a 3 life core instead of the usual 2, but there are other powers. I'm sure each power will have a huge fan for it, but for me, the charge attack is easily my favorite power in the game, as it can allow you to dodge through bullets and has a lot of great synergies. There's also a hot swap, which allows you to change bodies at a great distance, and the recall ability that lets you summon a katana, though I don't find that one as useful. I've only used it a few times. Each core, though, has a purpose. If there's one thing that roguelites will have, though, it's going to be upgrades and synergies, and SUPERHOT Mind Control Delete is no stranger to this. In Mind Control Delete, your upgrades are simply called hacks. As you progress through a set of levels, you get offers of 2 different hacks from your list of hacks at predefined points. The goal seems to be offering you 2 different hacks. A critical choice will have to be made. That's the idea, at least. Some choices, though, have clear winners. Super Throw, for instance, which increases your throwing power, really never seems worth it. On the other hand, my personal favorite is Super Punch, which will instantly kill any enemy you hit. I'll pick that choice almost every time. There's also a few late game hacks that I'll avoid naming here, but they can just be so overpowered to the point of breaking Mind Control Delete, or it feels utterly useless. Granted, there will be patches and balances added over time, but I think that there are clear winners of the hack contest even before someone considers the synergies of what they're building for. Now, of course, this is the core idea behind Roguelite, so I get it and I appreciate the system. The problem I have with the hacks is not that there are winners and losers, but collecting hacks are optional. Yet there's no way to disable a hack after you pick it up. If you don't like Explode, for instance, which throws shurikens when you take damage, it would be better never to pick up that hack. But on that first playthrough in SUPERHOT, you're going to be picking up some hacks that probably could have been left behind. Honestly, hacks probably shouldn't be optional. That would solve the issue in my mind completely. Or if they are optional, there should be a way to disable some hacks so you can ensure you're getting your favorite upgrades. But I'm sure speedrunners and pro players will choose only their favorite hacks on a second playthrough. Also, in that vein, one save file kind of sucks here, and there's not even a way to reset progress. SUPERHOT also had one save file, but there was a clear progression there, whereas Mind Control Delete has some choices that players may want to make differently. Nothing too much, but it would be worthwhile to have a second save slot. And you know, there's one last issue I have with Mind Control Delete that, well, there's also this game. If you have a VR unit, you need to invest in SUPERHOT VR. The original game was short, and I thought SUPERHOT VR would have the same problem. It might in a little way, but dear God, SUPERHOT in VR is unbelievable. It is the killer app for the VR headset, and honestly, it's just one of my favorite games. Now, I'm not going to be doing the game justice here. I'm trying not to move my head too much to avoid making it uncomfortable for you, dear viewer, but well, time moves when you move in VR, and it's so much more intense because you have to stand completely still to make those choices. SUPERHOT VR is just incredible, and the problem is SUPERHOT VR broke me for the original game. SUPERHOT is great, but as I said, VR is just incredible, and the reason it's so good is because they reworked the entire game from the ground up to make this VR port. This isn't as simple as having the same rules in VR. Just giving players 2 hands where they can pick up 2 different weapons is a major change. Being able to reach out and punch someone wherever they are is very different. Having the ability to shoot in one direction without looking is also completely different. The inability to move changes a fundamental part of SUPERHOT. And while someone could have made a simple VR mode for the original game with all these changes, the entire SUPERHOT VR is redesigned entirely from the ground up. And if that's not enough, the player can actually just step out of the way of bullets or hide behind barrels and shooting around them, which is so awesome to do. I don't think there's words to explain how great SUPERHOT VR feels, but when I got it in my hands, I realized this was something really special. And the problem is, as great as Mind Control Delete has become and how much of an upgrade it is from the original game, SUPERHOT VR is just that much better. Hopefully one day we'll get another SUPERHOT VR title. With SUPERHOT VR still king in my mind, I am really happy with Mind Control Delete as well, and I like the original SUPERHOT, though there are a couple things that nag me when I play that one, length, interface, and story. I just found the game too pretentious. It is crazy innovative for the time period, though I think that VR and Mind Control Delete still give you better experience in 2020, with both of them being worth a pickup. The original game, maybe not. And that is, of course, what I have for SUPERHOT. I hope you've enjoyed this video. I've enjoyed making it and playing through SUPERHOT Mind Control Delete. Even though I probably have a little bit more of the game to play through, I'm still having a blast playing it. 13 out of 14 achievements if anyone wants to know where I am currently. Now, if you made it this far, consider hitting that subscribe button and ringing the bell. Honestly, this video was a complete joy to make. I'm considering making some minor changes with the release schedule. I'll talk about that more shortly with Death Rising coming up next, but I'll still be making videos and we'll have the humble choice next week. I'll pop up a couple videos if you want to watch. I'll leave it up to YouTube to make those decisions this week. And until next time, I'm King Lincoln. Thank you for watching.